Lent is the period in the Catholic Church that leads up to Easter. The purpose of Lent is to prepare the believers for the annual commemoration of Holy Week and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We as Catholics also feel an obligation through prayer, almsgiving, and self-denial to further prepare for these days. 40 days of Lent are marked by fasting and other acts of penance. The sacrifices in Lent are also a time for renewal. Aside from giving up something, you can also reach out to others, share your smile, help a fellow student, walk a neighbor to school, or be especially considerate in so many other ways. The Stations of the Cross are a way to reflect on Lent. We as a school community will hold weekly services to think about Christ's journey. We will stop at each of the 14 stations and reflect verbally on the meaning of each one. Please join the class of 2024 as we lead you in these reflections to recognize the sacrifices Jesus made for the world and us.
The first station. Jesus faces Pilate and is condemned to death. Outside the governor's palace, a crowd is gathering. Each year, at this time, it is Pilate's custom to release a prisoner, one the people choose. News has spread that Jesus will be brought to Pilate today. His mother, Mary, and his friends make their way into the courtyard. A prisoner is brought into the palace. The prisoner, Barabbas, convicted of murder. Pilate, the Roman governor, steps forward to preside. He looks out at the crowd. The soldiers are forcing Jesus toward him. Many accusations are made against Jesus, but he remains silent. Pilate is anxious to please the crowd, so he asks the mob to choose between Barabbas and Jesus. Pilate releases Barabbas. Yet Pilate knows that the chief priests are jealous of Jesus and are stirring up the crowd to demand his death. Pilate is afraid of a riot, so he publicly washes his hands of the matter. And Jesus, totally innocent, stands condemned to die on a cross. How hurt and humiliated Jesus feels to be so unjustly condemned. All he gives is love. All he receives is rejection. How do you choose? Each day we choose Barabbas or Jesus. Barabbas appears as selfishness and dishonesty. We choose him when we are most concerned about ourselves, when we cheat or lie. Jesus appears as self-sacrifice and honesty. We choose him when we uphold the truth, when we reach out to others. Lord, help us reject the lure of power and money and personal comfort. Help us choose Jesus.
The second station. Jesus accepts the heavy cross. Jesus realizes the torture he is about to undergo as the Roman soldiers drag a large wooden cross before him. It is crude and very heavy. Jesus is still in pain from the soldiers' whips and the thorns pressed deeply into his head. He feels dizzy and weak, yet he accepts the heavy cross. On his bruised shoulders, he lifts it up and begins the journey to Calvary. For Jesus, the cross is a painful reminder that those he loved have rejected him. He will carry it as a special sign to all people that God's love rejects no one. How patiently do you carry your cross? Is it a burden, a difficult relationship, physical pain, financial trouble, too many pressures, or perhaps the fear of failure? Whatever cross is thrust upon you, Jesus still reaches out to help you carry it. Lord, help us to accept our own cross as willingly as Jesus did. Help us carry it, Lord, when we can't make it alone.
The third station, Jesus falls the first time. The cross grows heavier as Jesus climbs a steep hill. There are limits to his physical strength, and Jesus falls. Pain fills his entire body, and anguish fills his mind. How can he go on? He feels so weak emotionally too. It is harder with each step. He knows the pain will only get worse. Nonetheless, he tries. He stands up, and again he tries. How do you handle a fall? When you make a mistake or fail to be the person you should be, do you give up? Do you blame yourself and others? When life is painful and you are worried, do you trust that God's still there somehow? Or do you doubt and get angry and complain, why me? Jesus shows us that to fail is human. To serve the Father, we need only try to get up and keep going. Lord, when we've fallen from selfishness or sinfulness, help us get up and try again.
The fourth station, Jesus meets his mother. Mary's heart is breaking as she climbs the hill to look for her son. As Jesus comes around a bend in the road, they see each other. Their eyes lock in a loving stare, but their hearts lock in enormous pain. For Jesus, it is painful to see his way of love, causing his mother so much pain. For Mary, it hurt deeply to see her son's love answered with torture. Powerless to take away each other's grief, they gain strength from one another's supportive presence, without speaking their hearts' join in purpose, for they both know it has to be. How do you react when someone you love is suffering? Like Mary, do you search them out to share their pain? Do you at least try? Or do you find excuses and arm yourself with insensitivity? There are people in pain all around us, emotional pain, physical pain, and the pain of loneliness. We can avoid their suffering and discouragement by being too busy, or we can swallow our own pride and fear of rejection and reach out in support. We can listen, we can care. Lord, help us to be there for others with our support and our presence, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. The fifth station, Simon of Cyrene helps carry the cross. Jesus weakens. He stops. He is unable to go on. The soldiers are afraid that exhaustion and weakness might cause Jesus to die before he can be hung on the cross, so they force a man in the crowd to help. Simon sees the cross as a shameful burden of wood, so he is a reluctant helper. But being with Jesus is powerful. Something about Jesus and his his silent suffering touches Simon's heart and changes his outlook. Willingly, Simon continues to help. Gratefully, Jesus accepts. How willingly do you help Jesus carry the cross? He still carries it every day in the suffering of so many around the world. Can we really blame Simon for his reluctance? Each day, the faces of poverty and war flash across our TV screens and fill our newspapers. We too turn away. We convince ourselves that we have problems enough of our own, and so Jesus continues to suffer. Like Simon, we can become a helper to Jesus. We need only spend time with him so he can touch our hearts and fill us with his powerful love. Lord, give us the courage we need to share the crosses of others.
The sixth station, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. As Jesus pauses along the road, a woman makes her way through the crowd and bravely past the bewildered soldiers. Seeing Jesus, bathed in sweat and blood, she wants to comfort him and let him know that someone cares. Ignoring what others might think, she gently touches a towel to his face and softly wipes away the dust and blood. As if to reward her bravery and tender touch, Jesus leaves an imprint of his face on the cloth. An image, a reminder that comforting others leaves an impression of God. How well do you accept the help of others? Do you trust others enough to share your needs, or are you too proud or too embarrassed? Whether it's a listening ear or a helping hand, we grow in humility when we accept. Often, we refuse to depend on others. We want to stay in control and need no one. But we imitate Jesus when someone reaches out to us and we are grateful. Help us, Jesus, to trust others and be humble enough to accept one another's help.
The seventh station, Jesus falls for the second time. The dirt road grows longer and rougher. The loss of blood increases at every step until Jesus cannot go on. He slumps to the ground under the unbearable weight of the cross. He's afraid he cannot go on. The pain throughout his body intensifies. He knows it is not yet over, so he asks his Father for strength. The impatient soldiers roughly drag Jesus to his feet. It is only his great love for us that compels him to begin walking again. How do you feel when you fail more than once? Do you worry what people will think? Do it when you swallow our pride and say I'm sorry, when we try hard at a difficult task, when we persevere? We follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Mother Teresa reminds us that when God calls, he doesn't expect and that we'll always be successful. He only asks that we be faithful, that we try. Lord, grant us perseverance, keep us faithful. The eighth station, Jesus meets the woman of Jerusalem. Jesus meets a group of women and children from Jerusalem beside the road. The sight of Jesus with his broken body and bloody face makes them cry out. Forgetting about his own pain, Jesus tries to comfort them. He asks them to pray, not for him, but for themselves and for their children. Jesus knows that the world of human weakness will always be filled not only with love, but also with man's cruelty to man.
The ninth station, Jesus falls the third time. The torturous journey with the cross has taken its toll. Jesus is completely drained of strength. Staggering, he collapses to the ground. He has lost so much blood he is barely conscious. The soldiers take his cloak, but nothing can take away his will. He is determined to show us his love. How intense is that love as it drives him to get up again? What do you do when life is hard and you don't think you can go on? Jesus shows us that the world can take away our health and our possessions, but no force on earth and none in hell can take away our will, unless we freely give it. When we feel drained, his love is always there for us. We need only spend time with him to feel its incredible power. Lord, help us be energized by your love, that we might always find the courage to try again.
The 10th station, Jesus is stripped of his clothes. At last, Jesus comes to the top of the hill. The soldiers take the cross from him and drop it on the ground. As Jesus stands there, he can feel his clothes sticking to the dried blood of his wounds. Violently, the soldiers tear his skin as they rip the clothes off his body. And Jesus stands, cruelly humiliated before a jeering crowd. He stands, ready to die, possessing nothing but his incredible love. Do you realize that Jesus is still being stripped today? Millions of people in our world today are stripped of their dignity by poverty and inhuman conditions, not only in other countries, but right here in our own community. Too often, we choose more things instead of helping people. Jesus is stripped of his garments again and again as we buy more and more for ourselves and neglect the poor. Help us, Lord, to strip ourselves of attachments to possessions. Help us choose people before things.
The 11th station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. Jesus understands the cross. He dreads the pain, but he does not struggle. His executioners force his legs into place, but Jesus willingly stretches out his arms to embrace the will of his Father, to embrace us. His loving embrace is answered. The blows stop, but the sharp, piercing nails hold his body on the cross. The soldiers raise it up before the crowd. They curse him and taunt him. Jesus hangs there. Love is crucified. How many times have you crucified love? What kind of nails do you use? We nail Jesus to the cross when we cause others to wince from our mocking words or unkind comments. We nail Jesus to the cross when we cheat or lie. We use nails of pride and power and selfishness and apathy. We crucify love when we nail others to their crosses by our words and our actions. Love, nail our hearts to your cross, that they may always be there to love you and never quit you again.
The 12th station, Jesus dies on the cross. Jesus hangs between heaven and earth. His life is gradually seeping away. For 3 torturous hours, it seems the pain will never end. His friends can hardly stand to watch his agony. They struggle to understand as he suffers to fulfill his destiny. The pain accelerates. Jesus feels so alone and so empty. It is hard to be tortured by a world he has only loved. But even in severe pain, Jesus finds enough energy to love one more time. His mind and his body are overwhelmed with pain, but he follows the pattern of his life. He concerns himself with others. He reaches out to his mother and John. Christ's body sags. The pain in his chest magnifies. He pushes himself up on the nails in his feet and struggles for every breath. Finally, the nightmare of pain and suffering comes to an end. Jesus, the God-man, completes his task on earth. Please kneel. Let us consider Christ's incredible love for us. Lord, help us share your incredible love with one another. Like Jesus, may we live to serve the Father.
The 13th station. Jesus is taken down from the cross. The broken body on the cross is limp. The crowd has gone home, and Calvary is very still. Only Christ's mother and John and Mary Magdalene remain with him. They feel so alone, so full of despair. They take Christ's empty body down from the cross and gently put it in Mary's arms. With infinite gentleness, she cradles his body. Her mind races with memories from Bethlehem to Calvary. Before the crowd, they curse him and taunt him. But then she is overpowered by a feeling of emptiness. How dark death looks, how hard it is to end this way. How do you handle death? Do you, like Mary, trust that there is more, or do you despair and lose hope? When someone we love dies, it feels like the end of everything. We feel so helpless, so empty. It hurts so much, yet Jesus promised to erase that pain. Can we trust and go on, even though nothing material goes with us into eternity? Our relationships do. Jesus died that we might one day be reunited with those we love. Ease the pain, Lord, when we must grieve, and help us live a life that centers on our relationships and not our possessions.
The 14th station. Jesus is carried to the tomb. The friends of Jesus clean the blood from his torn skin and cover it with ointment. They are relieved to see Christ's suffering ended, but also ended are the hopes, inspired by his presence. Although they touch him, they feel no warmth. He is no longer here. His lifeless body reminds them. Filled with sorrow and emptiness, they follow as his body is carried to the tomb.